The full-sized Ford Galaxie has spanned the ranks of the Ford lineup from a large family hauler to even the R-Code turnkey drag car specials. Few vehicles have had such a wide range of applications over their long production run, but with the Galaxie's production spanning from 1959 all the way up to 1974, there was a very short period of time when Ford built what was to become one of the most desirable and captivating full-sized cars ever made. And to match those stunning new looks, Ford had a little trick up their sleeve in the engine compartment that would make all the difference. This is the story of the 1960 to 1961 Ford Starliner. The Ford Galaxie was introduced in 1959 as the new generation of Ford full-sized cars, spanning from the coupes to the sedans, convertibles, and even wagons as well. The name Galaxie, and subsequently the names like the Starliner, Skyliner, and Sunliner, were deliberately chosen by Ford at the time to try and synonymize the car with the space race craze. The space race was on the bleeding edge of technology, and Ford wanted people to liken their new car to the same level of new and exciting tech. In 1959, the Galaxie and the Fairlane were essentially the same car underneath in the early days, with the Fairlane being a less equipped, more utilitarian version of the more upmarket Galaxie. In '59, both of the cars still very much looked like children of the 50s. But when 1960 rolled around, the Galaxie and the Fairlane got their new space-aged redesign. Like many other early 60s designs, these new bodies bridged the era of design between the later 60s muscle cars and the 1950s coupes. These new Galaxies still had the classic fins on the quarter panels, although now they were much less pronounced. And the rest of the shapes on the car got a lot more simplistic in terms of styling. There were distinct body lines, and the cars had an overall more smooth shape. With the Galaxie and Starliner in particular, this perplexed lots of buyers, as comparing the prior 1959 cars to the new 1960 cars was like comparing apples to oranges. They looked wildly different. The Starliner itself was a separate trim level / model of the Galaxie, if you want to call it that. It was separated from the base model Galaxie by its swoopy, fastback roofline that was unique to the Starliner. The regular Galaxies had their more standard roofs, so even at a glance, it was very easy to tell the difference between a regular Galaxie and the Starliner. On the space-age Starliners, there were quite a few design choices that made them look like they were precisely from the space theme, like the half-moon looking taillights, the 3 circular trim pieces on the side of the roof, and more. While at the time the Starliner was maybe a tad bit controversial when it came to its styling in 1960, today people look back at them and love the way they look, especially the 61 cars, which we'll talk about later. But with the new Starliner coming out, if Ford were to have given this new space-aged coupe a undesirable and lame engine under the hood, people would rightfully be pretty annoyed. Thankfully, though, that was not the case. With the new 1960 model year, Ford would go all out with their new 352 cubic inch V8. The 352 Ford engine was the newest iteration of the Ford FE engine line, which replaced the aging Y-block Ford design in 1958. The 352 engine for the 1960 model year was available in 3 configurations. The 2-barrel, which made 220 horsepower and 336 foot-pounds of torque. The 4-barrel, which made 300 horsepower and 381 foot-pounds of torque. And the hypo version of the 4-barrel, which made a very impressive 360 horsepower and 380 foot-pounds of torque, which made it the first factory Ford road car engine to make more horsepower than it had cubic inches of displacement, which was quite the milestone. There was also the smaller 292 V8 available in the Starliner, but at a measly 185 horsepower, no one really batted an eye at that engine, with the 352 in top trim essentially making double the power. And to be honest, if you look at the old performance numbers, the Hypo 352 was really the only one to have in the Starliner. Motor Life magazine in period tested the 300 horsepower Starliner with the base 4-barrel configuration at the quarter mile, and got an abysmal 20 seconds out of it in the quarter. There's no sugarcoating it, that is very slow. But when the same magazine tested the Hypo 352 Starliner, they were able to put a 14.8 second quarter mile timeout, which is over a 5-second difference, which is absolutely monumental. These Hypo cars also got a larger set of drum brakes, a more robust drive shaft, a new set of exhaust manifolds, amongst other changes that would help set them apart from the rest. The rear gear ratios of the Hypo cars would have also been a 356:1. Some of the difference in the times here, though, could be attributed to the transmission choices as well, with the Hypo cars only being available with a manual transmission, while the other cars could have a very slushy 2 or 3-speed automatic. And the only manual transmission available in the Starliner was a 3-speed on the column. There were no floor-mounted 4-speeds available, or were there? See, this is where the story of the Starliner gets really interesting, so buckle up. By 1961, this was the second production year of the Starliner. The early 60s horsepower wars were going strong, and the marketplace was rapidly evolving. At this point in the production run for the 1961 model year, discerning buyers who were in the know could now get their Starliner equipped with a 375 horsepower mill. That was the new Ford 390 FE, and they could get it with a 4-speed floor-shifted manual transmission. Production numbers for this exact combo are extremely difficult to find, but from what I was able to gather, this exact engine and transmission combo for the Starliner was a 1-year-only engine option more towards the end of the 61 model year, and there were not many made at all. But wait, there's more. In late 1961, Ford also introduced a new dealer-installed tri-power carburetor package for the 390s. These would come delivered in the trunk of the car for installation for what was allegedly track use only. This setup would bump the horsepower all the way up to 401 horsepower out of that 390, which put these Starliners into deeply fast territory. The Starliner was actually the NASCAR platform of choice for Ford at the time because of its more aerodynamic fastback styled roof that provided less drag at higher speeds. The 1961 Starliner also got a front-end redesign as well as a rear-end redesign, changing out the classic semicircle taillights for a more traditional full-circle taillight setup and a more normal full-width grille, which I definitely do prefer from a visual standpoint, the 61 cars compared to the 1960 ones. On the inside, the Starliner was a step up from the Fairlane in terms of interior appointments. This was the era of body colors being carried over onto the metal surfaces of the interior, which only added to that space-aged feel, coupled with the horizontal speedometer and aircraft-like switchgear on the dash. From a suspension standpoint, the Galaxies and Starliners used a body-on-frame construction, with a full-length frame and a typical set of leaf springs in the rear. The Starliner itself wasn't super special from an engineering perspective, but it was from a styling and impact perspective. The Starliner only enjoyed a 2-year production run, which started in 1960 and ended in 1961. As in 62, the Starliner trim and the fastback roof altogether were gone. The end of the swooping roofline for the Starliner did, though, mean trouble for Ford in NASCAR, as the new boxed roof only design for 1962 ended up costing the Ford NASCARs an estimated 3 miles per hour in top speed at some of the biggest tracks, which was a huge blow. Ford tried to engineer a workaround at the time by using a Galaxie convertible with a bolt-on fiberglass fastback roof, but that was outlawed almost immediately. which would result in the 63 Galaxie being created with a swooping fastback roofline as an option because that was so imperative for aerodynamic success in NASCAR, which in a lot of ways makes the Starliner itself the big brother to the fastback Galaxie, which saw major success across racing categories. It is said that just over 90,000 Starliners in general were built during its production run, but from the numbers that I can find, high-performance 352 cars and the crazy 390 cars are very, very hard to come by. From what I can gather, it's estimated that probably less than 10% of the total production run were the 352 hypo cars, and even less than that were the 390 cars. The legacy that the Starliner leaves, though, is one that's quite interesting. Visually, after the years have went on, people appreciate the looks of the Starliner, but essentially as just another version of a Galaxie, lots of people don't even know what the Starliner was, and more importantly, how its fastback roof helped pivot the styling of the Galaxie fastback for years. Today, these are hard cars to find. The availability for body parts to restore these early 60 to 61 Galaxies is sparse, and it takes a lot of time to source the parts to put one of these back together. But just take one look at one that's completed, and you can see why there are people willing to spend all the time keeping these Starliners alive. Thank you all for watching another episode of our Rare Cars documentary series. If you enjoyed this video, we would greatly appreciate it if you could drop a like and also share this video with other enthusiasts. Also, please make sure that you are subscribed to the Rare Cars YouTube channel and smash the notification bell for more documentary-style videos just like this on the world's most interesting cars. Until next time, enthusiasts.